Small turnout tonight. Thank everybody for coming. I've been asked to remind you there are refreshments here.
Eat a lot. I don't want to bring home.
If you'd like to get the notes from tonight's meeting, make sure that we have your email address. We will put out the information via email, so you don't have to take notes down. The other reason why for this is that a lot of this information has already been recorded on YouTube and is already up, so we'll give you the links on the email. If you want to go back and look at the history of the information that we're going to be discussing tonight. I'm Scott Goldstein. I'm the president of CILU. I'm joined here by Jenny Blumenthal, who's an executive board member, a founding member of CILU. Next to Jenny is Karen Strickland, also an executive board member, also a founding member of CILU. And we have at the end Pradeep Janjay, esteemed community contributor, and he'll be giving his insight to the financial impact to Holmdel schools and taxpayers. What we're going to go over tonight is I'm going to give part of the history from the court case present. Jenny is going to go over an article recently written in the Wall Street Journal. Karen is going to speak about the history of COA and affordable housing, and Pardeep is going to talk about the financial implications. We'll try to hold the questions and answer to the end. Full disclosure, I am recording like I do all my meetings, and I will be posting this on YouTube. If you don't want to be recorded, don't get in front of the camera. Okay?
Can Pradeep, Karen and I switch places, because I'm talking about a cost also.
If that makes you happy, go right ahead. You know. Oh, places in order?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, good. Well, take it away.
I'll set him up.
Good.
No, I think I'm supposed to start, right?
Huh?
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to start with the history of affordable housing. I'm going to pass these out to people. History of, okay. So, affordable housing, the Mount Laurel obligation idea started in 1975 with, it was to establish to fight anti-discrimination. Towns were creating zoning to limit who could move into a town, and so the group called the Fair Share, which has become the Fair Share Housing Center, sued the town of Mount Laurel in order to open up the zoning to allow more people to move in, and the state Supreme Court decided that actually the zoning laws of Mount Laurel were discriminatory, unconstitutional, and they had to change. So that was the backdrop of this decision in 1975. But of course, everybody was fighting and didn't want to allow it to happen. And so it's gone lots of appeals over the years, and it's rather messy. It's not like it's a really clear and easy to understand. And I've looked around in lots of different places to find information. And what I'm getting about right there is just kind of, I think, the beginning of my understanding of what all's involved, since I'm not a lawyer and I haven't followed this issue very long, except for just living in town, and people say, oh, COA this and COA that, and we need to do this and we need to do that, and everybody just says, okay, and it's not really very clear what's been going on. So this group from Cherry Hill, the Fair Share Housing Center, is the group that has really led the fight for affordable housing in the state of New Jersey since 1975. It's actually some of the same people that are involved in doing this and doing this fight. And it's actually set a standard for the whole country. So New Jersey is ahead of the rest of the country in the constitutional idea of protecting everyone's rights to be able to buy property and to live in a place. So the original Mount Laurel decision was 1975. That was called Mount Laurel 1. And then, of course, everyone was appealing and fighting it. Nobody wanted to let people move into towns. And so 1983, there was another big Supreme Court decision. And that is when the Supreme Court said, look, towns. You need to follow the rules. You need to accommodate people in your town that are all different kind of income levels. And if you don't, the builders have a remedy. And that's when they started this builder's remedy, that builders could sue a town for noncompliance. And then people said, well, we need to be more exact. We need to understand better exactly what the rules are. So they tried to, the Supreme Court in 1983 tried to create a formula. And based on, it seems like the formula, there's like 50 different criteria. Families and seniors and proximity to transit, density, all these different criteria that they put together to try to determine what the obligation should be. And then, but it was complicated. So then in 1985, the legislature, the state legislature decided to create, it should be here, the Fair Housing Act. 1985 was the Fair Housing Act, and as a result of the Fair Housing Act, Council of Affordable Housing was created. And that's where the word COA comes from. So it was a Council of Affordable Housing that, and was to establish rules to make it easy for towns to know what their obligation would be, what would be the criteria, and how to go on. And so that was called, then there was the first set of rules, and then there was a second round of rules, you can see there on the handout. Then in 1999, the rules expired, and there was like a lack of political will to do very much on COA, and it just kind of petered along for a little bit. Until 2008, when again, the Fair Share Housing Center came back in, and went all the way to the Supreme Court and said, we got to do something. And so the Supreme Court again said, we got to pay attention. And that's in 2008 is when they eliminated the ability of towns. Because what towns started doing is they started paying to have the affordable housing go someplace else. And so they started paying money, and the Supreme Court said, no, that's not constitutional, you can't do it. So that ended in 2008. And then court cases went along. It's lots of court cases on this thing. Then in 2014, the New Jersey Supreme Court said, the Council on Affordable Housing isn't working, no one's doing anything, so we need to have the courts really become the center of focus. And they came up with this idea that if you participated in submitting a plan to the state, then you could become indemnified against a builder's remedy. And so Holmdel in 2015 submitted a plan to the state to protect them from the builder's remedy and said, this is going to be our plan. I couldn't really find that plan. But January 2016, get rid of that 7, that's not 16, it's 2017. Again, this was a really big deal. In January of last year, the New Jersey Supreme Court said that all towns in the state have to meet their affordable housing obligation, and they have to go backwards to 1999. So they can't be excused from what happened from 1999. They have to go all the way back and meet their obligation from 1999 all the way up to 27. But they said, all right, but to make things easy, it'll be from 1999 to 2025. So 10 years back and 10 years forward. So, and again, this is where Scott has been really great on videotaping. So you can go on, that's what's the June 27th thing, 2017, Andy Byer. He is our lawyer for affordable housing for Holmdel. And he did a big discussion on the status of affordable housing and what the rules are and aren't. So that's where I got a lot of information from. And then August 8th, so that's one YouTube thing you can look at. August 8th is another one. And now this settlement agreement between the Township of Holmdel and Fair Share Housing Center is actually the settlement agreement that was put out in order to meet the 2015 litigation that had started. And so in 2015, there was an initial conversation, and then this settlement agreement as a result of that. So there's been a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of what's going on. And then, as a result of that, there was December 16th, there was supposed to be a fairness hearing in front of a judge. So the Fair Share Housing Center, which is this group that's been involved all the way along, and Holmdel came to an agreement, and then they were going to go before a judge, and the judge was going to approve it. and that's what Scott is going to talk about, what happened when they went in front of the judge. But a part of the settlement agreement was that Holmdel had to identify the properties that they were going to use to meet the fair share housing obligation. And the properties have to meet a reasonable standard. There has to be a genuine belief that it is able to be developed and to meet the obligation. However, the key part of this that is really an unknown is what the number is. What number is the obligation going to be? And so many of us who were at the last township committee meeting when they were talking about what the number would be, all the lawyers, everyone's like, oh, we can't tell you, it's quiet. So it is a subject of negotiation that's still going on. So you can see there, that's where we are right now. You can go, I've said Google the YouTube, that's CILU Holmdel, and you'll find all the videos, they're very good. And then these are two other places I found on the internet where they talked about the Fund for New Jersey and the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey. So there are lots of groups in the state that are trying to meet the moral obligation of affordable housing, but doing it in a way that maybe doesn't jeopardize open space and environmentally sensitive land. Because that seems to be the pressure point, is that as a community, we want to do our part in meeting affordable housing obligations, the right thing to do. However, you also don't want to destroy the community that you have with your open space and protect your water quality. So that's where I understand we are right now, how we got from 1975 to the present.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because it makes logic to fill in the gaps, okay, and bring you up to date, and then we'll have Jenny talk about the article and our deep go as far as the impact of Holmdel. The judge is Dennis R. O'Brien. The interveners, well, we were sued by the Fair Sharing Housing Center, and my understanding is that was set up by the court specifically to make sure that
That's the group from 1975.
yes.
Same
Okay.
group.
So,
They sue everyone in the state.
So, and this has been going on behind back doors with very little information coming out to the public. As Karen said, and there's a YouTube link that I will post when the township hired attorney, which is Andy Beyer, okay, went over the obligation. It's a complicated formula, but basically the number that I see that was presented is we're on the hook for to build we're short about 100 properties. We get credit for about another 200 properties that we already have, okay? So we're really not in terrible shape, okay? But it's that 100 that we haven't met. Of that 100, okay, we all know that when Somerset proposed the Bell Works, they're on the hook for, I've seen numbers as high as 60 affordable housing. At the last township meeting, the number 32 came out on the table, okay? But again, that whittles that 100 down to, we need about 60, okay? So that's the kind of obligation we have. The builders, okay, that own property look at this as a windfall, and they're basically saying, we can't build you your 60 unless we build 4 and 5 times that, what they like to refer to as market rate. Basically, read big profit for them because they're going to put in high density housing into our community. Again, that's where they're going to make a ton of money from, okay? And anybody that owns property in Holmdel wants to make sure that they're part of that designation, that they're allowed to build that higher density on their property. And that's where we're stuck. Pardeep is going to do an excellent job in talking about that. The court. Let me give you the other where. Okay. They always run off on block numbers and lot numbers. I did the research. Okay. We all know about Palmer Avenue. Okay. I think it's Tony's right in front of me, so I gotta get the numbers right. 50, block 50, lots 17 and 18, okay? There's been some stuff going on behind the scenes. The township has already been sued by 2 litigations about that. I think they wrote letters to the judge, and unofficially, I think the judge understands that this has already been adjudicated, and it's not fair for them to be back in the fire again to have to deal with this issue again. So Palmer Avenue people have been doing an excellent job to get that off the books. Just as a side note, the town has been working with Rutgers to do a study on the Wackanac Creek, Waycake, and to model that to figure out why it's flooding, okay? But that's a side point, but it's a problem that's been going on for 20 plus years that I know of. Okay, so one property proposed was referred to as Palmer Avenue. The second property is the Bayshore Nursery across from Bayshore Hospital, okay? So it's the nursery and the house, okay? And those are two separate ones. Then there's a piece of property back up on Middle Road, okay, where we have that flooding. So when we talk about flooding of Palmer Avenue, there's also flooding on Middle Road. There's also a video that I did that documents this. The road is impassable. But there's a property up there that goes between Middle and Laurel Avenue, which is what they're proposing. It just so happens that a lot of the affordable housing happens to be in that corner of our community. Just a statement of fact. The last property, I'm not sure where it is because they made a mistake when they read the ordinance. It was
Nursery.
No, it's the property just north of the Kohl's Shopping Center, where the Sorleone's nursery used to be.
You know, TZ Greens?
TZ
Green.
Well, there's a sign there, but it's the one just north of, and behind Kohl's where a assisted living facility was turned down a number of years ago. It's a skinny property that goes way
It's
back.
Scorpio on the sketch, that's right.
It's on 35.
Yes.
It has a small L to it.
There's L to it, right? Little L.
It's an odd shape.
Yeah, it's a funny shape, yeah.
I guess I'll stand.
okay.
Can you tell folks,
Let me just.
oh, okay.
Okay, so I went to my first court hearing, okay, I've never been in a courthouse before. I actually went in there with a video camera, I was turned away, I was told where to go to apply for it, I wasn't given permission to videotape it. Nothing lost because the meeting on December 18th was all done behind closed doors. Because the attorney's there, which was interesting, so we had fair housing, we also had the attorney from Somerset. I recognize him from the meetings, and we had a bunch of other attorneys. So I'm saying, what the heck why is all these people there? And it starts to dawn upon me because they want to have this designation because it allows them to build higher density. They all want to be included in this because it's a bonanza, okay? And basically it comes down to, as I said earlier, if I'm repeating myself, we have an obligation of about 132 of that is already supposed to be met by Somerset. So the number is really about 60. But the builders are coming in, and even Somerset says, oh, we can't build this unless we build 4 and 5 times full price units to be able to build the low cost units, okay? So instead of us looking at 100, we're now looking at 500 units. You do the math with the student population, and then you see the real impact to the community, which Pardeep is going to talk about. The next there was a court hearing update in February 2nd, where the judge wanted to get an update. The next meeting is March 9th, okay? We actually wrote a letter to the judge, and he actually read it aloud. My name was on it, and we actually objected to the fact that we weren't giving proper notification. The judge read my letter aloud, as well as I mentioned to you that he said that my request for videotaping was denied, but I should submit it further in advance for further in advance. So it seems like a glimmer that I can go back and videotape their proceedings. I think that brings us up to date. Jenny?
My comment was, could you tell folks where the facilities are that gave us the 200 credit?
Oh, as you've heard, we've been at this for a long time already from the community point of view. They've built many affordable housing units. Some are purchased, some are rentals, okay? And they go through and they added up all those to see what we had already done. And we have the Exhibit A.
I'll be handing it out.
Yeah.
Everyone
So,
have it.
Okay.
So that's what we get credit for. In contrast, what the attorney pointed out that, oh, we're in much better shape than Colesnack because Colesnack was paying other communities to build their affordable housing, and what the court has basically said, from my understanding, is that doesn't count. So when you talk about rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4, they went back and said, if you haven't built in your community, you're not getting credit for it, okay? I'd really like to know how these other communities are going to deal with this issue. Okay, did I answer your
What I
question?
got today is that what was in the past is in the past. And you got, what you got credit for in the past stays as part of your credit.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
The judge did say, when he came out, and there was a postponement, he did say that the reason for the delay is that there was some disagreement with the township attorney and the Bell Labs property attorney. And they had to resolve that issue, and there was to be a meeting in February as a preamble to make sure that there's no conflict in the March meeting. So it seems to be that the hinging issue was the Bell Labs property. He didn't say anything more than that, but he did mention it's the Bell Labs property together with the Holmdel Township not having an agreement.
I'm personally kind of annoyed that this was all happening behind closed doors.
Yes.
Okay?
That's a major-
Because basically, this was supposed to be a fairness hearing, and obviously there's still disagreement by the interveners as far as, you know, specifics we have no knowledge of.
It's a very serious issue because, you know, this is beyond the cusp of making it happen. I mean, we would just, if the Bell Lab property, if, as I understood the judge's statement after they came out of their private meeting, if Bell Labs and Holmdel had an understanding, we would have this in place. There would be no walking away. And that may still happen in March. So this is very real. It's not an academic exercise.
If I could just make a comment,
Yeah.
please. There was a meeting, I believe it is June 2010, where there's this big presentation made as to how Somerset was going to do this brand development resulting in Bell Works. And at that time, they said, oh, we're going to have about roughly 60 affordable units, which are going to be beds in this convalescent center that they were proposing as one of the tenants in Bell Works. So that was the thing, which is really the stake in the ground. And it was fairly well documented and agreed to.
Maybe that's the sticking issue. I don't know what the issue is.
Yeah, that was in the redevelopment.
Selective memory.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, we don't hear about that. One of the last meetings that Somerset actually spoke about, because they were applying for zoning change to put on a hotel on top of the building. They were concerned about the parking spot. He says, oh, I have about another 100 acres of the property that he could use for parking. He also has an obligation that he has to complete by 2024 for the affordable housing. So he doesn't have to build it on his property, but he actually has space on his property. Also, 2 million square foot building, you can't figure out how to make, 32,000 square foot apartments. Wouldn't make a dent in 2 million square feet. We continue to be sold a bill of goods.
Yes.
I'm just putting it nicely. There you go.
Scott, after this last township committee meeting, it seemed like it was just a matter of fact that Somerset has till 2000, whatever year they said, to write the check. So that seemed as a matter of fact, there was nothing, no disagreement. So what might be the disagreement with the judge? Or was this now settled and that's what they're going to go back to the judge? We have no idea.
Jay, anything I say would be pure speculation because we were not allowed.
Because wasn't it seem like this is a matter of fact at this last meeting?
All he said that there's a disagreement. He didn't say what it was. He just said
I think that you got to be careful there, Jay. The till 2024, 25, or whatever the date is whatever Somerset and the township agreed as part of the redevelopment agreement.
Okay, so that's just separate.
So that's a separate thing. So somehow the township and the Somerset agreed, we know we got an obligation and you meet it by.
Yeah.
But that's separate from the litigation.
Okay.
And so the court, the litigators are saying, that's elsewhere.
I suspect there might be something with the agreement between the fair share. Holmdel is really trying to work their process with the Fair Share Housing Center to get ahead of the court things. And a part of what they have to do is they have to present a realistic opportunity for the units to be built. So for the Fair Share Housing Center to stamp that this is okay with them, there needs to be this realistic opportunity that they're going to actually be built, because in so many of the previous court cases, they made arrangements and nothing got built. So maybe what's happening here is the Fair Share Housing Center is saying, not until we see exactly where those units are going to be built are we going to agree with that.
Okay.
And right now it's just a paper thing, no, I mean, I saw these words a lot. Realistic opportunity for units to be built was a common thread.
Well, one of the problems with, I will be talking about the article in the Wall Street Journal, but one of the problems of putting apartments or affordable housing or any kind of people facility in the Bell Labs building is the way the building was constructed, in that it is so large and the parts of the building, the engineering part of it is gigantic quantities of concrete that you could barely drill through. And Ralph and I were laughing about it at one point that if you assume that a hotel room is X number of square feet, because of the requirement of a hotel room or a bedroom of any kind, it has to have a window and it has to have ventilation. That the room in question, because of the configuration of the works building, is that the room would be something like 10 feet by 60 feet.
5 by 60.
5 by 60 feet. Because there's no plumbing up on anywhere except in a few bathrooms that were put there for employees, and there's no heating system that could be altered by somebody in an adjacent room, and the ceilings are gigantically tall, and it just doesn't work. So that's why we came to this mess of having a seventh floor put on top of the building to alleviate the need for hotel rooms that are 5 feet by 60 feet. Anyway, by sheer coincidence, on February 19th, there was not February 19th, that's today. On
The 12th.
February 12th, there was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal entitled "The High Cost of Affordable Mandates." And despite the fact that I think we thought we were the only people in the country that were having to deal with this issue, this article covers a lot of interesting facts, and it was written by two men who are resident scholars at the American Enterprise Institute, and I thought, oh, this would be really wonderful to get one of them to come and speak to us tonight, but the American Enterprise Institute's in Washington, and I think they're a little busy worrying about other things than us. So I have this article here, and it is a very interesting and thoughtful comment on the need for affordable housing, which nobody is debating. The problem is, how do we do it? And Pradeep has a mathematical calculation, but as this article says, that as housing prices recover from the Great Recession, municipalities across America are considering laws that will raise the house of home ownership. The Wall Street Journal reports that cities like Philadelphia, Detroit, and Atlanta are requiring developers to set aside some portion of their new units to sell or rent at below market prices to low-income households. Like many progressive promises, this is a fool's errand. These laws will reduce the cost of housing for targeted political groups if they increase the cost of housing for everyone else. The concept called inclusionary zoning, meaning that it includes poor people and all the way up, has been implemented by 886 communities, nearly 90% of which are in California, Massachusetts, and New Jersey, which I don't think we knew. While the intent of these laws is to increase the supply of affordable housing, history shows that they increase the cost of housing and limit the supply of new affordable units for everybody. Consider a project, that's a little arithmetic thing here. Consider a project plan to produce 100 identical new housing units with development outlays for land, materials, zoning site preparation, and other costs of $23.75 million. And that's about what we're talking about here. Including a 5% return for the developer, or he wouldn't bother to do it, the project cost $25 million. Without the government involvement, the market price for each housing unit will be $250,000. The successful sale of 100 units at this price would cover all of the developer's out-of-pocket development costs and give him a nice profit. Sounds good for him. Well, what happens if the municipality requires the developer to sell 10% of these units at below market price? Laws are rarely so specific. But assume that the municipality caps the price on affordable housing units at $125,000, half as much. The law doesn't change the cost of building. It merely changes the price the developer can legally charge for some of its new housing units. The total cost of $25 million must now be spread over 10 units, each with a maximum legal price of $125K, and 90 units priced to cover the remaining cost. Each of the 90 market price units must now sell for $263,889,000, or $13,889 more for the developer to cover his costs, which means probably us. Now, the policymakers may view inclusionary zoning as a free lunch, like the Township Committee. But requiring developers to sell or rent 10% of their housing units at below market prices to qualified households means charging above market prices to everybody else. The affordable housing requirement increases the median house price in the development by 5.5%. The impact on non-subsidized home prices can be even more counterproductive. Inclusionary zoning laws impose significant costs on the developers, which are forced to find buyers with the necessary qualifications and financing to purchase the subsidized units. So you've got to interview all these people, make them a list, and find out what they can afford to pay, and so they have to hire some more staff and more paperwork. But if the potential pool of non-subsidized qualified home buyers falls short of the 90 households that are now priced at $263, the developer won't undertake the project at all because he can't cover himself. Because he's left there sitting there with them empty. In that case, the overall supply of houses will be smaller as the new developments are abandoned, putting additional pressure on the prices of existing homes. Presumably in that particular development, but also it might make the prices rise for everybody else in town. The example is simplistic, but the historical record bears out its common sense predictions. A 2004 study by the Reason Foundation, whatever that is, found that inclusionary zoning laws led to less affordable housing in the San Francisco Bay Area. Total production of new housing units declined, and the production of new affordable housing units declined precipitously. The drop in new home construction also coincided with significant price increases for resales and new market price units. Of course, the price of housing in California is like crazy. And so studies from a couple of other places show that housing is more affordable when there are fewer land use restrictions. Now this is kind of sneaky. If zoning, building codes, fees, and inclusionary zoning laws raise the development costs, housing will be expensive. And Lord knows we have enough of those rules and regulations here. So you go to a planning board meeting for some of these subdivisions, they go on and on and on and on and on because the developers have to do X, Y, Z, Q, and P. Many zoning codes, like in Holmdel, place restrictions on unit density, parking capacity, size of dwelling units, landscaping, and countless other factors that drive up building costs and price many households out of the market. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Rather than promise the impossible, making housing affordable by decree, municipal governments should embrace practical solutions, which Pradeep has one possibility of thinking out of the box. They should adopt land use and building code regulations that reduce development costs. That chance. They should expedite approval processes, lower impact fees and taxes, and reduce other unnecessary regulations. Only by adopting measures that trim development costs can municipal governments stimulate the production of new housing that is more affordable for everyone. Now, of course, nowhere to here does it say that we shouldn't do it or, you know, send it someplace else, but the financial ramifications are worse than an octopus. So, you know, you fix one thing, I mean, it's like the tax law or affordable housing or the immigration. You can go on and on and on about
So I want to...
what will solve the problem, and nobody's ever going to be 100% happy, but I guess we have to do it. But the question is, how can we do it at the least financial impact? Because if these people are getting their houses for $125K, and we're living in $600,000 houses, the fact that they're not holding up their side of the bucket on paying for our $20,000 a year school things means that we got to pay more for the schools, and they're getting them off cheaper.
The other
I have copies to pass
The other
out.
disconnect that I have is it's supply and demand. Okay, it builds the units. The builder is going to sell that at as high a dollar as he possibly can close it. Okay, so if he reduces cost, all you're doing is increasing his profit. He's not going to artificially hold down prices for units. The affordable housing units that would be possibly dictated that he does that, but what they start in the courts is complain that we can't do this unless you allow us to build 4 and 5 and as many times over the units we actually need. So I think that I personally would like to see Holmdel play hardball and say, hey, there's a tremendous demand to live in this community. We're funding 100 units. Whoever wants to build the first 100 units gets the preferential treatment as far as zoning. After that, the door closes, okay? And there's many other ways to do this other than to go to the developer. One of the suggestions I've made is to change laws and to allow people to have a mother-daughter or a carriage house on their property. So they could rent it out to an au pair, anybody that provides services to the family, or somebody who works in the community. So this way we could distribute it across the community. It's not all built in one place. Those people that have large homes could easily accommodate that. But I think our people go into more details now as far as financial impact.
Given this build-up, it's something already to get to this. Okay. Well, I just have an idea, and I think it's worthwhile discussing because this thing is happening. It's not academic, and it's going to impact us a lot. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to talk about 3 things, right? One is understanding the plan that the town put forward in the August meeting, where they gave themselves, the township committee gave themselves the authority to engage with developers on behalf of Holmdel. And it was, unanimous because they're all from one party and they all agreed. So Exhibit A is the last, it came from that meeting and gave us some idea of what they were planning. So the first sheet basically presents the numbers that came out of Exhibit A, and so that we can understand what exactly they were proposing. Next sheet will be about what I think the biggest items from cost perspective this plan will involve. And lastly, I've got an alternative. So just to get you an idea as to where this thing is going. Okay, so the first thing is to extract from Exhibit A, and you can read it at your leisure. But basically, they identified 4 locations, as we discussed earlier. And each one of them has the total number of rental units. Now, it's key to understand it's a family rental unit. Okay, so those are key words. Family means more than one person. Rental means they're all rental properties. So unlike the majority of the people in Holmdel own their property, you get a different kind of population in your home. So understand that. So it's a transitional focus, unfortunately. So you're going to get rental and family. And family will imply, because there's nowhere defined in this, how many bedrooms these units will have. But family suggests to me at least 2 bedrooms, which tends to include more kids than if you only had 1 bedroom or a studio. So keep that in mind. So what they said was, and you can go back to Exhibit A, and I've got some scribbles on it to extract this information. The North Piers property, 150 units, and between the lawyers and the township's lawyers, they felt that that would give us 30 credits. Okay, some are bonus credits and some are actual units. So you're going to get 30 credits. That means 20% of the property are the actual low-income housing. Okay? Middle Road, 50, and you get credits for 10. So basically, you see the percentage of low-income housing in these are 20%, running roughly 20%. The one around behind Coles Plaza would be 170 units and only 26, so you're only getting 15% of low-income housing. To build 170, by the way, they were proposing to have a 4 or 5 story building, okay, in Holmdel. Just be aware of what this means. And this almost passed. Scott and I were at that freehold meeting, so this is serious. This was about to happen. I think it'll happen in March.
Did they give a justification, or can you induce any justification for such low credit for that unit? Is it the site work? Do you have any idea?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea.
Okay, and just to confirm.
Yes.
The gross number, all of them are rental units. People
They're all
cannot take a
rental
mortgage
units.
and buy these units.
Yeah, these are not ownership units.
None of them are, they're not allowed to be? Or no?
They're defined as family rental units. I'm taking the words from the exhibit.
Okay.
So if you look at the exhibit,
Why
it says
couldn't
family
people be
rental
rental
units.
And according to the laws about the affordable housing, they are part of the fair share, is they are supposed to be eligible for purchase. That's one of the things.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I read somewhere.
Just one, yeah, there's certainly question with regard to the affordable units, whether there can be rentals or some available for purchase. And Holmdel currently has both.
But this plan is
Oh, it's
only
only
rental.
rental.
It
And
just-
does that also apply to the market rate units? They're only rentals?
Yep.
That's how it's
That's
defined.
how it-
That's how the
way-
exhibit reads.
We need to
That's
clarify
what I'm saying.
that.
Very
That's
important to
useful.
understand the words.
Right, exactly. I mean, we've been looking at this all along, but it's very clear here. It says family
Family
rentals
rental building.
on every single one.
Every
family
single
rental.
one. Okay, so it's very important to understand the
Wow,
words.
that would be news to the entire community if that's the case.
Because there would be a
Yeah.
huge change.
It's in the words.
I know, that's,
How
You
could
know,
the,
be careful what, that's why it's very
I
important
think
to read this
The
carefully.
way I read it is it's not fair to residents of Holmdel. It should be the same percentage we have now between people that own units and the number of rental units, and we should stay to that metric, so that we don't upset the community.
that's a profound change in
Yes.
demographics.
How?
Whether they're rental at 900,000 or 200,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
how
'cause
can
exist-
the developer figure out if he's making any profit if he can't grab his money and run? He's gonna have to
Yeah, I
sell
Well,
it
there
off
are
to
separate
somebody
companies
else.
that do manage. There's other companies that do.
Yeah, they'll sell it to a
ongoing
management company, whatever.
Yeah,
They're
but I
basically getting out
mean,
of
in
it.
existing units, I mean, well, the orchards behind the Commons, Palmer Square, all of those are what I'll call townhouse condo type developments, but all of that
Ownership.
is owned.
Correct. Most
Either
of it is
by the
owned. You can
affordable
rent
loan-
if you want, but it's owned.
It's correct.
And on
I mean, there
August,
are rentals in the woods and, Maria Court.
Palmer Avenue, there were
Well, that little triangular part
Yeah,
has some 8 apartments that are parallel to 35.
right. So they're existing, the current
Handful.
is a mix.
Right. And also what's not defined here, and I think it's a crucial question, how many bedrooms, right?
Well, in the case of the market, it's a legitimate question. On
Right.
the affordable housing one,
That's mandated, right?
it's a mix that's mandated. And
Okay.
some of that was discussed when they held the hearing on the Palmer Avenue proposal, which
Right.
died. But there exist rules on, in an affordable complex, so many have to be affordable more affordable to low income, to middle income. There are also rules that if it's an affordable unit, if it's one bedroom, you can't have more than so many people in it. If you're gonna have 2 kids, you have to have at least 2 bedrooms. And there's a whole lot of rules of that sort.
So what we saw, what Ralph's talked about, because we participated and heard the proposal for Palmer Avenue, and when Albert, the builder, made his proposal, he says he's building X number of units. Of that X number of units, this percentage is 1 bedroom, this percentage is 2 bedroom, this percentage is 3 bedroom, okay? And that's how he presented it.
Some of that was dictated.
I didn't know that that actually is dictated by law, but that.
He said that.
Yeah, so that's how we kind of surmise that there are other things at foot here that control that.
Well, the Fair Share Housing is trying to get more communities to agree to rent to families rather than senior housing. You know, there are a lot of communities that are trying to fulfill their obligation by having it be age-restricted communities and single, and so that's part of it. But in the settlement agreement, it says that the settlement agreement that was presented, that was going to be presented on at the fairness hearing, it says the township shall provide letters from the owners and developers of these sites, and the number of affordable units will be developed on each of these sites, and that these units will be family rentals, and thus qualifying these sites for family rental bonuses.
Right, so another point, I mean, we're going to go bounce around a bit, but I'm not a legal guy. However, it sounds like the litigation hangs its entire argument ultimately upon the need to provide low-income housing, okay? So I understand that, and I'm not fighting that. What I'm saying is, if the town says, okay, we understand that, you've litigated us, and you, the developer, are effectively in control of this process, because now you are suing us, the town. Put that in a bubble, and say, okay, let the town approach it totally differently, and go to the judge and say, this is our plan of how we're going to meet your obligation. If the obligation is roughly 100, 110, or whatever, we will directly meet those 110, and now we control the process. We put the bid out to developers and say, we will subsidize you to build these 110. And that comes back to so that what happens with that argument, or at least that approach, and I'm not a legal guy, it takes the wind away from the other bubble, right? Because their whole argument hangs upon this fact that we are not meeting our obligation. Well, we will meet our obligation, and we will meet it more effectively and more efficiently. And we control the process, not the developer. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out because the litigation is true, and that's been our response within the context of that bubble. That box was created by the lawsuit. We don't have to abide by that lawsuit, is what I'm saying.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here,
Yeah.
okay? And I think the judge's approach on that would be well, that's interesting, but what ability can you guarantee that you will actually make good and build those units? Where the builder, he's looking at profit, so he's money motivated to go ahead and build, okay? The fact that we're saying that we're going to do it, the town's not builders. They don't own the
we are not the
Let
builders.
him finish his story
Yeah, just-
before you
yeah,
jump
go
in.
ahead.
Yeah.
Finish.
So that's my concern.
Well, my response to that is, we don't want to have this. We are very motivated not to have this. And the judge will understand that. This changes the nature of the town.
But he's going to focus on, he wants an actionable plan that actually accomplishes
And
the goal.
we could potentially present that as a plan if we went and investigated this other way. We have not talked about it.
So-
All that we are talking about is their box.
Yeah, so let me flip my hat again and go back onto the other side, devil's advocate. We have Somerset that's supposed to be on the hook for 32 to 60 units. On a 2 million square foot building, I think they could squeeze out another 60 units there without blinking an eye. And we can subsidize that.
No.
Well, Jeannie, it's not practical. It's fine.
Competitive bid.
Okay, let's do this. Before we jump around too much, let's get back to the present day, then we can jump out here. Okay, so I've highlighted, I've intentionally segregated because Exhibit A actually did that. The Lucent property has only 34 on it for Exhibit A. And the cynic in me is going to say, Lucent is not going to directly buy those and pay for it totally themselves. They're going to do exactly what every other developer is going to do, which is what they said here. Is 15 to 20% would be the 34, and they're going to gross it up to 188. That's what I did here. So that's how my number comes out to. The total number of family rental units is going to be closer to 600 houses that are going to be built. And I think that's very reasonable. And if I was the developer, if I was Mr. Zucker, I would do that, right? I'm a businessman, that makes sense, and it's totally defensible. You did this for everyone else, I'm going to do it too. So I think we will lose that argument. I think 600 is a very legitimate number to look at. Okay, so that's in terms of what Exhibit A is. Now, in terms of what's going to cost to us, right? The annual cost to educate a student here in Holmdel is $20,000, and then there's some givebacks from the county and whatever. And also, one can make marginal arguments, meaning the schools have excess capacity, so you're not going to have to hire more students exactly. So I said the marginal, let's call the marginal, not 20, call it 15, okay? So 15, and the taxes will be roughly about $5 grand on each of these units that are built. Cannot be much more. The orchards is around 5, close to 6. So, and those are townhouses, these are going to be apartments. So 5,000 I think is a very reasonable number. Now, that means for every unit that's built, it's going to cost the town at least $10,000. I'm not talking about the police, the firemen, the roads, the whole thing. Ignoring all of that, just education alone, each unit is going to cost us $10,000, okay? Now, question is how many students in each of these units? And I put a spectrum there of 0.6 because Jeannie mentioned there was a 0.6 and I went and researched it, and yes, the 0.6 is correct. There is a number there. It's done by a Harvard professor who is paid because he has to declare who's paying him. He's paid by multi-house, there's an association of developers for multiple unit buildings. So he's paid by them, okay? I don't have the wherewithal and neither do I want to spend the time to criticize his work. He put down 0.6 as the average. Let's use it.
As a former school board member,
Right.
I can comment on numbers for Holmdel.
Right.
For decades, the net number in Holmdel has been 0.6. Although a family may have 2 kids, if they're below 6, they're not in the public schools. If they're over 18, they're not in the public schools. Our kids have been out of school for 20 years. Approximately, there are 5,500 homes in Holmdel, residential units. And there were as many as 4,000 students a few years ago. It's now down to about 3,000. So the long run number in Holmdel is about 0.6.
Now,
However, and this goes back some years when similar issues came up with the prior roundup in affordable housing. And the school doesn't necessarily keep it that way, but at the time I talked to the bus coordinator who managed the bus routes
that's a good.
and took a look at some of the existing developments. The newest developments, it ran more like about 1. So that people move into Holmdel because of the schools, but they typically don't move in with 2 10-year-olds. Maybe somebody that's 2 and somebody that's 8.
Right.
So it's not the 2 per family again. But so the oldish data in Holmdel was that the number was more like 1. So if you build a new development, new people coming in, it's going to be more than 0.6, but it's not going to be 2. So a reasonable number is on the order of 1.
Perfect, because that's exactly how I sort of reasoned it out. I said, rental units, family rental units, the number's going to be higher than the average in Holmdel. I don't know what the numbers are. I took the guy 0.6, I said 1 and 2, and let's look at all the numbers.
One other factor that's not there is that some families choose to send their kids to private schools and not to the Holmdel school. In many communities, that number is much higher than here. In Holmdel, it's run about 10%. If you do go for religious reasons or other reasons to some of the private schools, but again, that's a decades-long number in Holmdel. It's been like 9 or 10%.
These people aren't going to send they.
But the,
Yeah, these are different.
That's
the
correct.
state mandates that our buses transport those kids, so that asking the bus coordinator will get you the number of.
How many kids do you pick
How
up
many
from
kids
this
are
development?
going to Randy or St. Benedict's or CBA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's sort of a little bit of a moot point. I think we are, as long as we keep this at a common sense level,
Yeah,
you don't have to
you
be
want
super
the
accurate.
ballpark.
Yeah,
Correct.
you don't have to be super accurate.
Of
right?
course, anybody who's living in
Along that
affordable
super accurate,
rentals.
if I may, does this include, because I have a daughter with special needs, I know she costs a lot more to the school system, does this include and reflect the overall population, the average cost, including all those
Yes.
adults? Okay,
Right,
okay, fine.
right. It's the average cost.
Okay.
Okay, so, I just did a very simple thing. I took that 0.6 and I took 1 and I took 2 kids, right? And I multiplied that by the number of units, which was 608. And I said, those are the number of students which will be added to the school system with this development, with these developments. So you get 365, 608, and if you have 2, 1, and then I just multiplied that by the 10,000, right? So these are annual running costs, okay? So you're looking at 3.5 million, 6 million, 12 million running costs, okay? So it's somewhere in that zone. Let's use the 6 million number, okay? Even if you use the 0.6, I'll show you that it's still an extremely expensive way to go. And it sort of speaks to Ginny's article, right? If you have very high fixed costs, a developer has very high fixed costs. It's the lumber, it's the foundation, the whole thing. He has to extract the profit from those units to pay for all the concrete, the lumber, which is all common whether it's low income or not. So that margin, to him to get money, he has to build so many more units. It's not that he's an evil person. He just has to build that many more units to make his profit. Okay? So it's sort of like the argument of the library. It made no sense for the library to sit in that building. It's an office building. It's very difficult to get to. It's going to get worse. He should have just given us a lump sum money up front, go build your library. He would have been better off, we would have been better off, but we ended up with that, and it'll be nice for a while. Okay, so